Well, Lee, thank you for being here.
Of course. Always a pleasure.
Is it?
Is it? Yes. No, it is.
Let's unpack that. We'll just jump right into it for How the Arts Were Won, episode 4.
That's what it said on Zoom. Yeah.
Oh, good.
That means it's real.
Season 2s are hard. Lost, Mad Men.
Lost. Lost was
Or the
lost.
sophomore slump.
Yeah, I liked Lost. I liked Lost season 2, and I liked Mad Men season 2. So you're both wrong. Yes, Lee, it's good to have you on. I feel like you've been on before because we've talked so much over the last 12 years.
Yes. Yeah. I've been on in spirit, but now for the first time in actuality.
Yes. All three of us are fresh off a trip to Thriller Fest in New York City.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where we hung out.
What were your thoughts?
What were your thoughts? How about that?
I had a great time, but I also needed 2 days of not speaking to a person after it.
Yeah.
There was that. It's a lot of people, and it's Times Square, so it's, the intensity level is ratchet up, but always a good time.
I'm not a fan of Thriller Fest. I think this was my first Thriller Fest. I think if everything was hunky-dory. A lot of people, more people than I perhaps had realized. But walking through Times Square, every time I'm in New York, I like Midtown. Midtown's still like my favorite area just because I'm most familiar with it. But I try to avoid Times Square just because it's like its own little postmodern universe. Not in the fun like postmodern, know.
It's not fun.
The seventh circle of hell, basically. It's the black hole that you just fall into.
Yeah. But the rest of the city, hey, that's great.
We're not bad. We're not a bad city.
No. And in fact, we met a lot of really fun to talk to authors, which is nice. So a few of them will be on this specific podcast in the near future. Right. I want to make the editing as easy as possible for Michelle because I don't do the editing.
She says that every time.
Every time I say it, and every time. Not easy at all.
It's like progressively harder. Like it's his own little disinformation that he feeds me. It's like I'm trying to make it easier for you. No,
it's just failing. All right, so Lee, I have a million different topics that we can kind of touch upon. We typically do like the little background bio on the guest, but I'm going to have you talk about it because I think you do a great job pitching yourself. So Lee, hit it.
I'm Lee Matthew Goldberg. I primarily consider myself a thriller author, although I have a young adult series as well. And I am also a budding screenwriter and adapt most of my books into scripts that then I try to make into film and TV. But yeah, I actually feel like I need a brand manager to succinctly be like, this is Lee, because I'm all over the place. And in some ways, I think that makes me an alien in the publishing community because you can't quite fully just pitch me.
In one sentence.
Yeah. Or in a very long run-on sentence.
It would be a meaty paragraph.
Yeah. But I kind of like that. And I don't know. I don't like to be put in a box. And sci-fi, sometimes it's literary, sometimes it's historical. But there's always some thrills going on. Let's say that.
We talked about this at Thriller Fest too, coincidentally, about how no matter what genre it might be, most books, most stories, most films, what have you, there is a thriller element to like every great story in a way, even like the like super conflicted like dramas or just, so that's what I kind of found most interesting about talking to all these writers who specifically write thrillers. Like when they were pitching their stuff to me, it was just a handful, but across the board, it was like, well, that could easily be a drama or a sci-fi or a whatever. So is thriller kind of like the root of
I would
human
think so.
storytelling?
I mean, every book and any good book has conflict, and conflict is a part of thriller. Any good book has tension, and tension is a part of thriller, suspense. So even, the most literary books out there, there's elements of death, of betrayal, of, all of these great things that make up thrillers. So, I don't know. It makes me wish that the publishing world less cared about sort of labels for books, and it's really sort of marketing. It's the marketing side of publishing that wants to be like, well, this is this, and these are the readers perfect for that. And when you really think about it, readers are very intelligent. They're already reading by choice, so they're smart people. And I think sometimes you need to let them kind of discover also what they want and not only give them exactly what you think they want. So I don't know. I don't know if that's potentially going to be the future, but I do see things changing a little bit in terms of genre specific books, that they're becoming a little more open to kind of bleeding genres, which is what I like.
That's actually running, I feel like, in tandem with the film industry too, where a straight like thriller isn't like what it used to be, where it was like, I watched Fatal Attraction last night for the first time.
For the first time? Oh, wow.
I was too young to rent it from the warehouse. What do you want from me?
We were about the same age, and I watched that at like 8.
Well, I watched Single White Female. That was my like go-to. I can't get Fatal Attraction, but can I rent Single White Female, which is exponentially more explicit in a way? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. They like my dad, rental store. Anyway, but that's like a straight, you could argue like romance for like the first. It's fantastic, by the way. Quick review of Fatal Attraction. It's one of the best films I've seen this year. But it's a thriller. But like you look at, some of the films I've seen in the last few years, like Bodies is like a comedy and a horror and also a thriller and also a mystery. And it's just this conglomeration of things, and no one really questions it and says, well, how come you're mixing genres now? But they did as recently as, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have a screenwriter that would come out and they'd be like, well, I write comedy and I also write horror. And like, then the manager would be like, well, are you going to write comedy or horror? And it's still kind of like that. You still want to have that brand, but it's so much, from my perspective, it's so much more open now in terms of what you're allowed, quote unquote, allowed to write, because your brand isn't necessarily tied to genre anymore. And I'm wondering if that's the same in publishing.
That's really great to hear in Hollywood that's happening. In publishing, it depends. Like, I think a very big author can do whatever they want, kind of, if they want to write horror and then they want to write a kid's book, they could do that. And, for people like myself, I think it makes editors a little confused sometimes. Well, how are we going to be pitching him for the next 5 years, So it's something I'm thinking about too, in terms of my future and how I'm sort of pivoting in terms of what I'm doing. So you could kind of zero in on me a little bit more and, hopefully make me more money that way.
Right.
I see this term used in a lot of, especially like, agent requests and things like that, like their manuscript wish lists or whatever. They say genre bending. What does that mean? And do they really mean genre bending, or do they just mean something that is really quite the same and can fit in a genre, but maybe just has a little tiny element borrowed from something else? I've never quite figured it out, because I knew several authors who pitched during Pitch Fest at Thriller Fest, and they're like, yeah, my thing is genre bending, but like the agent they pitched to who wanted something genre bending was like, no, this is too much into that other genre for me. It's not bending. So what is bending?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a catch-22. It's like, oh, they totally want something unique, but then when you give them something unique, it's too unique. So you have to kind of straddle the line. I think when they say genre bending, maybe it's capitalizing on what's happening in Hollywood, where they are more open now, where things don't have to be so well defined. And maybe that is sort of the future of what agents are looking for. Agents are on sort of the cusp of what's hot. So they would know better than anybody sort of what editors are buying. So that's fantastic. And I heard that at Thriller Fest from a few of them. And I was like, I'm curious when I send my next book, when my agent sends my next book out, and it's a thriller, but it's also literary and it's historical, and there's like a tick of sci-fi in it. Like that's going to be like way too genre bending. I don't know. We'll see. I'll let you know after it goes out, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I felt like the sci-fi elements to some of these thrillers were really what, like, it didn't sit well with a lot of the agents, because I definitely had a friend who had a thriller with this huge sci-fi thread, but it wasn't fantasy. But then, like, I mean, that brings us to a whole other thing about the line between sci-fi and fantasy, right? But yeah, they rejected him on the premise that, they thought it was too hard sci-fi or too fantasy. Like they said different things. One said, it's too sci-fi, and the other said it's too fantasy. So for some of these authors who do have, a little bit of sci-fi or a little bit of fantasy or whatever in their squarely genre fitting thriller, like, where did they go? What do they do?
Yeah, no, it's a conundrum. A lot of sci-fi, I think, is so specific in terms of what you're saying, like hard sci-fi, like aliens and robots versus sort of soft sci-fi that maybe could just be like a little speculative. So I think when they say that, they're looking potentially for more of that, like something that's sort of speculative fiction where you're taking our world and you're just tweaking it a little bit. That's something I think they're more open for. I think if you're throwing in hard sci-fi into genre-based books, it's tough, and again, it's something I'm going out with a book and it's all of the things we just talked about. And the list we sort of came up with is the weirdest, the editor's looking for sort of the weirdest thing out there. And hopefully that's who will embrace it, because I can't see it landing with somebody that doesn't like something out there. So sometimes you just have to find your match.
Right.
When you say hard sci-fi, is that like, to the layman, is that basically like sci-fi that you have to really explain? There's more world building, there's more depth to it, rather than like, it's the future and someone has a little hologram on their phone and that's it?
Yeah, I think of hard sci-fi as like robots and aliens, kind of.
Right.
Yeah, huge world building, where I think when they say genre bending and they're thinking of sci-fi, it's more like speculative sci-fi, that where it's our world, but there's some tweaks. Maybe like you said, there's holograms or, something like that, or, somebody else won the presidential election and carries on,
alternate history stuff.
Yeah. Alternate history stuff is, I think, kind of big right now. And maybe because nobody likes this era.
Nobody likes this reality.
We're not in the best of eras. We're not in an era that we're going to look back and fondly and be like, the 1990s are hot and everybody's like, nostalgia. This is not a nostalgia era. So I think personally, we want to get out of it in some ways. And a lot of this alternate history speculative has become big right now. So I'm thinking that's what they're really looking for with genre bending stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is not a nostalgia era. How's that for a dramatic pause? Thrilling.
I mean, it's a memorable era.
It will be once it's nostalgia. I don't know. Here's the thing. Someone was saying the other day about how like the last 20 years is such a clusterfuck of madness, right? And they're right. But like, I mean, wait until you hear about 0 AD to 1999. Like that's,
Sure.
quite the span where stuff happened. Or like the 60s where we had 3 assassinations and a war and a Cold War and a
but then you had the counterculture movement, civil rights, like things came out of the 60s too. And, the music and everything like that.
You're right. We don't really have that sort of cultural movement yet.
The difference is hope.
Mm-hmm.
There was hope in retrospect, but when you were in the moment,
I think there was still this sense of like motion and change, and there was a sense of we can do something, and because people were mobilizing, you're talking about civil rights movement, all that kind of stuff, and then the music and everything. I mean, it's just like people together doing things together and trying to make a difference. Right now, everyone's just like, we're so jaded and we're so like fed up with everything. Like we're just going to watch our, in Netflix and whatever. And
people right now feel very exhausted. People are just spent.
Yeah.
I feel it. Yeah. I feel it around me. And, like even last week, the sky was fully orange in New York City. Like it was horrible. You missed it by a few days.
I know. I'm so glad.
Dodged the bullet
there.
Like,
Sorry.
I'm glad I got out of there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't wish it on anybody. And I kind of was like, this is my least favorite day in New York City, I think. And I've been here for over 40 years. I was like, this
Oh
was the
my
worst
God.
day. It was worse. Yeah, it just was very depressing and made me think of the future. And
I don't want to be that guy, but you were there on 9/11. So you
no, no, absolutely. That was a horrible day. We've had some days. Let's say
this is the worst day in New York
No,
City.
you're right. You're right. Okay. It was
No,
one of
9/11.
one of the worst.
Okay,
days.
second to 9/11, this was the worst day.
Well, just the worst for like my thoughts of the
Psyche.
future. Yeah.
Yeah.
It, like brought me back to like bad COVID.
Right.
And it just put me in not a good place, basically.
Right, because I'm
Right.
sure 9/11, when that happened, you were totally focused in the moment and
Yes.
totally focused
Yeah,
on
9/11
on what's happening.
was insane. I was living at my parents' house downtown. You know, we were a mile away from where it happened. I mean, it was just full chaos for.
Bring it 9/11 randomly in a podcast.
So random.
But no, but
8 podcasts in a row. I've done it.
well, you also, like that was over 20 years ago. It starts to desensitize a little bit.
Right.
Last week, so like in my but in the sense that I felt completely trapped in my apartment. I could not open the window, I couldn't turn on the air conditioner, like I couldn't go outside.
Nothing.
You're just like,
oh my God,
in this like little bubble of 2 days basically, and then I feel like it's still hung in the air for a little bit. So anyway,
But you also lived through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but he could turn on his AC, Matt.
Turn on my AC. I could open my window during the pandemic. Like I could take a walk. Like
Lee
know.
is never coming back on this podcast ever.
No. Again, it was a moment of time, but it made me really worried for climate and our future.
Yeah.
And city. And that this will happen again and will happen again sooner than we think. So like that was sort of the psyche, that like really kind of upset me. Where I had planned, because it was right after Thriller Fest, and just having like a nice relaxing couple days.
Yeah.
Reading books.
And the weather was quite nice, honestly.
Yeah, no, the weather outside of that was beautiful. So it was sort of very eerie.
Let me ask you this. Here's a good segue. Does this era, is this going to spawn I'll just go ahead and say it, a renaissance of sorts in the arts, where we have all this like latent trauma, and we have this we're all kind of, in this like unacknowledgeable sense of PTSD, right?
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, and watching, everyone knows someone who at least knows someone who died from the coronavirus, right? Is that going to affect creativity and the types of stories we see, and even people gravitating towards the arts for that sense of escapism?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, look at the Black Plague birthed the Renaissance. And I think art definitely comes out of tragedy. You look at what came out of World War II even, and the art and the culture and, film and art and the birth of television. So I hope we're in that. I hope we have a roaring 20s like the last plague. That's,
right.
It hasn't quite happened yet. I mean, but that doesn't mean that we're not a couple of years away from that. But art is really complicated right now. Financially, it's very complicated for people to invest in. So I think that dissuades people. And, just in general, the fear that you're going to write something and there's no XYZ of it becoming something immediately. There's the fear of, like it being like a fart in the wind, kind of.
Right. Well, we see it right now with the film and TV writers, especially the TV writers, right? Where you do have this shrinking landscape that could very well lead to the same amount of opportunities before, but in a better environment, right? For those writers, at least to have some sort of sustainability. With publishing, I don't know, but I do totally agree that we are in this strange zone where, I don't know, I almost want to call it like it's the post PC era we're entering, almost, where people are like, you know what, let's just go back to like, reading cool stuff and not worrying too much about this and that. But then you see, I like to make these podcasts sort of timeless. We like to make these podcasts, but there is a recent event that I think that like, I'm really curious what Michelle's thoughts are, because it pertains to an area for expertise, and yours, because you're so, involved in publishing as an author and so forth. But Liz Gilbert, who I'm actually not that familiar with outside of like, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, right?
Right.
But I've been reading up and just looking at all the comments about her decision. I'm assuming her and her publisher's decision to pull her book because it has to do with Russia from, period Russia, right? But Russia nevertheless, and the pressure, I guess, that she had to pull it because of the war, and you shouldn't be writing about Russia at this time. And all of a sudden, people came out of the woodwork and said, like, well, this self-censorship is still censorship. And I'm like, sure, but like, this is, that author's decision. I'm curious, is it true that it's really the author's prerogative on whether or not to release their work? I mean, not the authors, but I don't know how it works with the author and the publisher. If the author doesn't want to release a book and wants to delay it, they don't have final say in that, right? The publisher does.
I'm guessing that from the 500 or so 1-star Goodreads for people that didn't even understand the concept of it,
right?
That it scared the publisher, and the publisher had a conversation with her and was like, let's not, maybe we'll postpone it. So I don't think it's canceled forever. I'm assuming that in the future it will be released. To me, I completely understand, supporting Ukraine and not wanting to make it difficult for anybody connected to that or to trigger them in any way, shape, or form. But if I'm correct, the book takes place in former Soviet Russia.
Yeah.
It's not pro-Putin in any way, shape, or form. It has nothing to do
there.
That it takes place before she was even born. So it's a historical piece that just happens to take place in Russia. Like, are we supposed to ban it just makes no sense to me. And I think the publisher just didn't want the headache of people coming after it without understanding it. And that's why it happened, which is unfortunate because she probably spent years researching and writing a very lovely book about it that has nothing to do with our current timeline. So it was quite unfortunate to see. And I'm sure it's sad for her as well.
Well, okay. So I was on a soapbox about this.
I'm going to pour myself some more coffee. Go ahead.
Yeah. Also, there's something I've missed of the conversation. Please let me know. But from the brief thing that I read, it seemed.
No. I'm in 100% agreement with you. Okay. I just want to ask a follow up to what you said. So you think that the publisher got scared. This publisher, because it's Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
Would they really be bullied around by public commentary to that extent?
These days, I think any bad controversy is, especially in publishing, something that they don't want to touch. So I think it's easier for them to be like, let's give it a year, 2 years, possibly. It's an historical book anyway. So it's not that it needs to come out. And why release something if automatically people are just going to come at it with pitchforks? So that's what I'm thinking. It also might have been hard to be like, okay, I did not anticipate this. I don't want to be the spokesperson for people connecting me to pro-Russia. So maybe we should. So maybe it was a conversation that they both had, but I think they were 100% scared off by, people online. That's what I would guess.
Interesting. Yeah, because I know they've published several other set in Russia books in the last year. Sure. So that's why I'm, it's interesting that this one, obviously, because she's a different kind of writer. Most of the other books set in Russia would be thrillers, and this is definitely not a thriller. So different audience, right, altogether. To me, the moment I found out, well, actually, I thought it was bad to begin with, but the moment I found out that it was set in Siberia, in a tiny little, remote part of Siberia, and most of Siberia is permafrost, come on, it's barely Russia as you would associate with Putin
It's not a contemporary story where she's exploiting the war or something. And that's what I thought at first, because I didn't know anything about it.
Right. And even if it were, this still would have been fine. I couldn't understand it. And I saw Pen America's comment basically that they understood Liz's decision. They said it was well intended, but that it was quote unquote, I think, wrong-headed to believe that, artistic work should be subject to a military, conflict essentially.
Yeah. Which I found comical because it seems that no one has a problem when someone someone announces a book, no one's read it, but it's like subject matter they think that author shouldn't be writing, or it's subject matter that shouldn't like be addressed or something, and they come out and they review bomb it just like they did with this one.
Yeah.
Pick a side. Like either you're going to be open to writers writing whatever they want, and then it gets released, and then the audience can judge it for what it is, and if they don't like it, they don't like it. You failed, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of the Goodreads issue, and anybody could have opinion about anything, even without reading something. Like, I would never write a Goodreads review if I hadn't read the book. Like, nor would I ever give a one-star review anyway. Like, even if I didn't like the book, it's something that an author took a good chunk of their time to write. And unless it's like Josh Hawley or like some horrible person, which I wouldn't even like pretend to like connect and write a review in any way, shape, or form. But like, it's rude to give a one-star review and be like, I hate this anyway, But I mean, beyond that, it's speaking to sort of where we're at now, where, yes, certain things definitely need to be addressed and potentially canceled, but not everything does. And just because somebody has an opinion about what they don't like, it shouldn't automatically end a book. Like,
right.
Before it comes out.
It was really harsh to read something like that. And like I said, I'm guessing that she just didn't want to get involved in it. She's somebody who's liked, but also a little bit targeted for Eat, Pray, Love, where people have very strong opinions, good and also bad, about a book like that. So I feel like she's been through sort of that before, where people...
And she didn't want to do it again.
And that was for something completely different. It was because it was like, this lady's problems. And, like, we don't really want to hear this, rich woman and her experience, which is valid if that's how you feel. But
then don't read the book.
Well, I just feel like, she's
not you. I'm saying the people.
Yeah,
the people. Yeah,
I'm not reading.
Don't read it, Lee.
That's probably not going to happen in this lifetime.
Yeah.
But nothing against somebody that loves that book. I mean, I think that's the wonderful thing about fiction, is that fiction is you could have a prerogative about it, and you could have a debate about it, and something that somebody loves, somebody else dislikes, and that's
right.
And no one person is right in terms of how they feel. It's just a personal feeling, because it's a fiction book. It's not real, So it was disheartening to see that. And I hope it actually does come out in the future.
Yeah. And I plan to buy it.
And like, Random House could have done something actually very smart. They could have released it and been like, you know what, we're giving 10% of the proceeds to the union effort. And I'm sure, I don't know Elizabeth Gilbert, but like, if that was me, I'd be like, give 20%, like, absolutely. And turned it around and made it a positive. So, I mean,
that would have been better. That would have been smart.
What we learn is I should be running.
I think so. Maybe, Lee, you can't market yourself, but you sure know how to market Liz Gilbert.
Liz Gilbert. I could be.
Well, then they, not to be devil's advocate, but then they would dig their heels even deeper into the political stance. But I think in that case, would probably be a good thing. Well, yeah, because then you're like,
I mean, I doubt any publishing company is fearful of taking Ukraine's side, unless they're super right-wing conservative publisher. So I don't think that would be a worry of them. I think that, they kind of just got scared. There's a real scary, automatically the book goes up on Goodreads and there's 500 negatives. Like, that's not great publicity for a book automatically.
Also, though, I want to know who these 500 people are, because part of me, the really cynical part of me, is like, okay, these are disinfo operators basically that are just deciding they're going to flood to this, or they're going to capitalize on maybe the few that were real, and they're going to amplify that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Goodreads gives a voice to everybody, and there are people who take that very seriously. So they read 100 books a year and they review it. I once had someone, it was a reviewer who hated my book on such a level that she just kept commenting. So it stayed as the first thing that people see endlessly and endlessly and endlessly, and then tried to get other people to like comment as well. So some people they're bored and that's all they have to do.
What's the point?
Right.
What's the point of that? How is that helping their like stature? Because that's what I'm
Well,
assuming.
Gives them, like I said, it gives them a voice. It gives them a purpose. I don't know. Some people, online is everything, and that's their life, and they take it very seriously, and it thrills them to go after an author and hate their book.
Let me ask you this then. Actually, I guess both of you, because Michelle's book was just released. It is called "The DJ Who Brought Down the USSR." Did I get it right?
Yeah. But if you're going to say that was set in the USSR during the 60s or 70s or whatever, and in Russia, yes.
No, I wasn't going to say that at all. I was going to say, like, is the whole review system kind of flawed across the board? Like, shouldn't Goodreads and some of these other sites have some sort of criteria before anybody can post a review, or is that very undemocratic?
I don't think you should not allow people to review. I definitely think like this one instance of, with Liz Gilbert's book, like that's a freaky issue. But like on the whole, saying you have to be this kind of person or have this sort of criteria that you fulfill before you can write a review. I mean, I don't think a lot of people would end up writing reviews.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% for people saying whatever they feel. And I actually like when I obviously like when somebody loves my book, but secondary, I like when they hate it because it's an actual visceral emotion to it. The worst I think somebody could feel is just pure indifference. And like that would hurt me more than anything. Somebody that like, this was something they absolutely hated. It means they kind of loved it.
Right.
That's a good point. There's the old saying.
And that's what I told that. It was the only time I responded to a reviewer. I wrote her back and I said, sometimes the things we hate, we actually love the most. And I put a heart emoji. And she apologized at first and was like, okay, I'm going to stop. And then like a week later, she started again. But for like 1 second, I feel like I got through where I was like, chill the F out. Like, come on.
There's the old saying that if you've written something that everyone loves, you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
That's right. Yeah.
I think all reviews should be banned, and we should go back to I'm totally serious. We should go back to the olden days where you had like a handful of like trusted film reviewers and trusted like literary critics and, trusted restaurant reviewers. And that's kind of what you went off on. And if you didn't read those reviews, you kind of tried it out anyway. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. And if you liked it, you told your friends. And that's it. Now we have this brigade of millions and millions of people now that just they either go into something knowing that they're going to love it and then they write a good review, or they know they're going to hate it. And then it's all confirmation bias and et cetera, et cetera.
There's people who also want to be writers and it hasn't happened. And the frustration of that, I think sometimes vitriol.
Absolutely.
No, don't delete that, Michelle.
If you're going to express your frustration in vitriolic statements, then you probably shouldn't be a writer at all, because part of being a writer is taking all the pain and the frustration that comes with it. And if you can't handle it with grace and dignity, then I don't know that you belong in the business,
And who wants to work with you?
Yeah. This industry is all rejection and people spitting in your face metaphorically, in a lot of ways. And you have to, have like an iron skin and be able to just kind of shrug it off. And, I think that's why people who do read all their reviews and really take it to heart, I really don't I really don't care if somebody doesn't like my book, as long as like they're not just like attacking me for no reason. It's part of why I want to write. I want people to have different opinions and to have conversations about my books, and for it to become something more than just something that passed their time for a couple of hours. But yeah, I do feel like, it's the social media culture. Everybody can have an opinion about everything 24/7. And not everybody needs to have an opinion about something 24/7. So, but we're in that world and we're not getting out of it. So there's no solution. It's only going to get more in terms of more places where people could respond and like that.
Yeah, social media has definitely limited real thought. But when you write, when you read, when you write, you're trying to provoke thinking. You're trying to get people to have nuanced views. And it's all now, I mean, you know, we've talked about this in a previous episode. We're totally in the post-truth era, which is like said to death now. But what does that mean? It means that we're all about feel and nothing else, you know? We don't want to dissect. We don't want to really, you know, understand an issue. I mean, that's what's going on with the whole Liz Gilbert thing, is that everyone's just like knee-jerk reaction to everything and end of story. We don't want to hear any further counter arguments or anything like that. Like, you just can't have any other opinion than no books on Russia or whatever, because that's somehow funding the war or something. Like,
yeah, I mean, I actually hope this becomes the thing that shifts it, that really people are like, I haven't read anything so far where somebody is supporting this in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
I read an article on Slate just now, and I forget
Atlantic.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like very reputable things that are really outcrying it. So I hope that this becomes a shift where it's like, don't just bow into the masses. And, you know, what, again, it might not even be real people. It might have just been some Russian chatbots that are like stirring it up.
That's what I thought. But why would Russian chatbots want to pick this side of the argument?
No, I'm not saying it was Russian, and I don't know. You never know though. Like it
Ukrainian
could have been
chatbots,
Ukrainian chatbots just as well. Like it doesn't. It's at this point, everything's bleeding together. It's all messy. There's no black and white, and people need to realize that. And it's just so hard to get through. And this is reminding me of, and I don't remember, Matt, if we talked about this or not, but a month ago when PEN America had their big like writers conference, and they invited some two Ukrainian authors to come to be on a panel at the conference. And this was, I believe it was in New York. And Masha Gessen, who is this big time, like she's a Russian American writer. She writes for the New Yorker. She's really, really well known, at least in my Russian studies circle. And she's on the board for PEN America. But she ended up resigning from PEN America, and it was like a huge loss and this huge controversy because the Ukrainian writers found out that there were going to be Russian dissident writers at the conference. And apparently the stipulation in their contract when they first signed or whatever to come and like talk was that they didn't want any Russians to be in their event. Okay. Event, PEN America interpreted to mean the panel that the Ukrainian writers were going to be speaking in, but apparently event to the Ukrainians meant the entire conference. And this was like a multi-day thing, a huge deal, right? And so Masha Gessen resigned over the way that PEN America handled it, because it was like it was a big deal basically. And the Russian dissident writers, who by the way have been rejected by Russia and everything, and are writing against the Putin regime.
And it's looking at just on face value and not really understanding the nuances of it.
No, discourse is dead. Long live discourse.
Yeah, discourse is dead. That's
but
right.
Like, hopefully it's not dead forever. You know, I don't think so. I think things go through, you know, hills and valleys, and you know, we're just we're headed into the age of Aquarius, and things are just shaken up and strange right now, and they have been for a few years. And you know, I think if you look at history, that happens every so often. I don't know, they say like every 70 or 80 years or something like that. So that's yeah, everything's cyclical. But it is a moment where like I, as a writer, question my writing a lot more than I ever had before.
There's very few hills that I'm willing to die on. And like one of them is that the virus came from a lab, and the other one, we'll talk about it next episode. The other one is that every creative person, every artist has the right to create whatever they want, and the audience has the right to judge them for it, right? You shouldn't say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, because I don't like it. If you don't like it, tough shit. You get to release anyway, because
just don't consume it.
America. However, interestingly enough, I tweeted out the other day. I'm like, the Liz Gilbert decision. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with this. Like, what's their choice? At least the author is in the position of authority in a sense, right? It wasn't like someone else said you can't do this. This was them saying, okay, maybe it's not the right decision, and it puts them in a position of power, right? So that's why I was kind of okay with it. But otherwise, fuck it.
No, I get it. I think that The Atlantic said it very well, because they basically said she was, she chose to eat, pray, pander.
Eat, pray, pander. Oh, boy.
I thought that was well done.
I think it's eat, pray, lame. Not quite there. We'll workshop it. Well, look, we can let Lee go on with his life after this.
Yeah, I'm having a great time.
I think so.
Lee Matthew Goldberg. I love him because his middle name is the same as my first name, and also because he's just a great, lovable person.
He is.
I think Lee and I and Pipeline Media Group will be announcing something very soon.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Is
something coming down the pipeline?
Oh, I'm canceling you, young lady.
I cancel you first.
Jesus Christ. I won't announce it yet. Finalizing early stage development stuff, but it's very exciting.
Yes.
Lost him. Russians got him. It's what happens when you talk about it.
That's what happens when we talk about it.
You step out of line, brother.
And I step out. Oh my God. I'm so out of line right now. You're back.
I don't know. I never lose my internet connection.
Okay. Yes. Cyclical age of, what was it, Aquarius? And
this is the dawning of the what? Age of Aquarius, guys.
It's true.
Okay, just edit that part out. The rest of it's fine.